Most cat owners assume wet food is simply a tastier meal option, but what's actually happening inside your cat's body goes much deeper than that. It affects organ function, energy levels, and even how your cat interacts with you. What unfolds might completely reshape your approach to feeding time. Here's what begins happening from the very first day. 1. Their body gets the hydration it deserves. Have you ever noticed your cat barely glances at their water bowl? That's not stubbornness or pickiness, it's pure instinct. Cats developed as desert predators. Their wild ancestors drew nearly all their fluid intake from the animals they hunted. Their natural urge to drink is minimal because their biology was never built around sipping water separately. Here's where the problem lies. The majority of house cats survive on dry kibble, which holds roughly 10% moisture. Wet food, by contrast, sits between 75% and 80%, almost identical to the fluid content found in small prey animals. So when you introduce wet food into the daily routine, a noticeable shift occurs quickly. Hydration improves. The kidneys no longer strain to filter heavily concentrated waste. Urine becomes more diluted, reducing the likelihood of crystal formation and urinary blockages, one of the most frequent medical emergencies seen in cats, particularly males. Research from the Journal of Feline Medicine and Surgery indicated that cats consuming wet food produced greater urine output at lower concentration levels, precisely what a well-functioning urinary system requires. Your cat won't visibly stop drinking water, but their body finally stops operating in a state of mild dehydration. And this single change is what makes every other benefit on this list possible. Stay with me through the final point, because there's one aspect of daily wet food that can create silent problems if you're not careful. 2. Their weight shifts in a surprising way. Why do so many indoor cats battle excess weight even when their owners aren't overfeeding? It's not inactivity, it's what's sitting in the bowl. Dry kibble carries a heavy load of carbohydrates. Some formulas contain upward of 40%. Cats are strict meat eaters by biology, meaning their systems have virtually no efficient pathway for converting carbs into usable energy. The excess simply converts to stored fat. It's not a behavioral issue, it's a dietary design flaw. Switching to daily wet food changes the math entirely. Wet food delivers higher protein, more moisture, and far fewer carbohydrates. That combination achieves something straightforward yet powerful. Your cat reaches fullness on fewer calories without you needing to micromanage every portion. A study conducted by the Waltham Center for Pet Nutrition found that cats eating wet food were more likely to sustain a lean body shape compared to those eating dry diets, even when food was freely available. The reason is that protein produces a stronger and longer-lasting sense of fullness than carbohydrates do. Your cat actually feels content rather than endlessly searching for more. If your cat has been carrying extra weight and nothing seems to move the needle, the issue may not be portion size, it may be food type. 3. Their coat reveals the truth. First, ever noticed how certain cats have that smooth, almost luminous coat, while others feel coarse and dry, regardless of how often they're groomed? What if grooming habits had very little to do with it? Your cat's fur is one of the most reliable windows into their internal health. When nutrition is lacking, the coat is the first place it shows. Dull texture, heavy shedding, flaky skin. These aren't surface-level cosmetic concerns. They're signals from within. Wet food is naturally abundant in animal-based proteins and fats, the two primary building blocks that skin and fur depend on. Dry kibble, even premium varieties, undergoes intense manufacturing processes that degrade many of those nutrients before they ever enter your cat's system. Most owners who transition to daily wet food report visible coat changes within several weeks. The fur softens, shedding decreases. That dull or dusty quality some cats carry begins to fade. It's among the earliest visible signs that something deeper is improving. Research featured in the Journal of Nutritional Science showed that cats maintained on high-protein, moisture-rich diets demonstrated better coat condition and skin health than those on dry food alternatives. The body stops conserving nutrients for basic survival and begins directing them toward quality of life. If you've cycled through every brush, supplement, and wash, and your cat's coat still looks lackluster, the answer may be waiting in the wet food section. 4. Their mealtime behavior transforms completely. Does your cat start vocalizing the moment you approach the kitchen? Do they devour their food as though competing against against a timer? Most owners chalk this up to personality quirks. But what if your cat isn't food-obsessed? What if they're simply never genuinely satisfied? Cats raised on dry food frequently develop urgent, frantic eating patterns. Not because they love food more than other cats, but because kibble fails to send the correct fullness signals to the brain. The high-carb, low-moisture formula digests rapidly and leaves the stomach empty within a few hours. So they beg, they pace, they interrupt your sleep at 4 a.m. because their body keeps signaling that something is missing. When wet food becomes part of the daily routine, that pattern begins to dissolve. Higher protein content triggers a genuine satiety response. The moisture adds volume to each meal, which expands the stomach enough to activate the signals that say, enough. A study in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior confirmed this. Cats consuming high-protein diets showed measurably reduced food-seeking behavior and fewer signs of frustration between meals. Your cat eats, feels satisfied, and actually steps away from the bowl. To be fair, not every case of frantic eating is solely diet-driven. Some cats develop rapid eating as a conditioned habit, particularly in multi-cat homes or in animals with difficult histories. In those cases, wet food helps, but pairing it with a feeding puzzle can deepen the effect. It introduces a natural pace and engages the foraging instincts cats are neurologically wired for. Once both elements are working together, the transformation is difficult to overlook. Cats that feel genuinely full become calmer and more settled around food in general. The guarding disappears. The desperation fades. Mealtime shifts from chaotic to calm. 5. The one risk most owners overlook. So if wet food delivers all of this, where does the downside enter? This is the part mentioned earlier, the side that can quietly cause harm if you're not paying attention. Most owners open the can, transfer it to a bowl, and move on. That seems reasonable enough. But wet food behaves very differently from kibble. Kibble can remain in a bowl throughout the day with minimal concern. Wet food cannot. The moment it reaches room temperature, bacterial activity begins. Depending on how warm your home runs, that safe window can close in as little as 1 to 2 hours. Cats that graze, eating small amounts across the day, carry particular risk. If your cat eats a portion, leaves, and returns later, that second serving may no longer be safe. The food may look identical. It may not smell different to you, but bacterial growth leaves no visible trace. The practical rule is straightforward. Never leave wet food sitting out beyond 2 hours. If your cat hasn't finished it by then, discard it. Any remaining food from an opened can should be sealed and refrigerated immediately and consumed within 48 hours. One additional detail many owners miss: serving cold, wet food directly from the refrigerator isn't ideal. Cats are naturally drawn to food near body temperature because it resembles freshly caught prey. A brief warm-up in the microwave or a small amount of warm water stirred in brings it into the right range and increases its appeal. This isn't an argument against wet food. Everything covered here still stands. But the gap between wet food helping your cat and quietly creating issues comes down entirely to how you manage it after the can is opened. Handle that correctly, and you're providing your cat with exactly the nutrition their body was built for.